Ready as I'm going to be.
Huh?
Ready as I'm going to be.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. For those of you who may not know me, which is probably nobody, I'm Pete Pokrant, the AOS Systems Admin. We're thrilled to have Unidata's Ryan May and Sean Arms here to present the Unidata Python Workshop, which is mostly about using Python to access and plot atmospheric and climate data, environment data. This is made possible mostly in part through, I didn't write this ahead of time, I'm making this up. Space Science and Engineering brought them in, and AOS is donating class time and the technology behind us. So it's a joint effort, and we're recording it for posterity. So hopefully, if you miss something, you can go back and look at it later, or people who weren't able to make it can get on. So with that, if you have any questions getting connected or issues, I'm around so we can try and work things out. Michael.
Oh, just when you were speaking, you were off camera.
That's okay. People know who I am.
All right, well, good morning. Thanks for coming out this morning. I guess just a little bit of background about me. I've been at Unidata now for about 2 years. Just recently now focused entirely on doing Python stuff. Before Unidata, I spent about 15 years at Oklahoma doing the trick of getting through my dissertation, and then decided I like software a whole lot more than actually working on research. So now I'm a full-time software guy who was a radar meteorologist in a past life. You want to give me a rundown?
Finish your dissertation.
I did finish, yes.
Yes, it wasn't a bail. So I'm Sean Arms, and I've been with Unidata for about 5 years now. The main project I work on is the Threads data server, but I also do some Python things. Like Ryan, I was at OU for about 11 years and finished up my dissertation remotely just a couple months after he defended. Don't recommend that, by the way. It's really hard to stay in the research groove when you're not surrounded by people doing research. So for the students in the room, stick to it and don't bail early, thinking you'll get it finished pretty quickly. Yeah, Ryan's been doing Python a little bit longer than I have, but back in grad school, I spent every morning in his office. He had the coffee pot, and we would just talk Python and coding and things like that. And that's a really good way to learn about these things. So I encourage you to visit with your peers and learn what you can in a nice, relaxed environment, and try to figure out, what's the most straightforward, efficient way of doing things. And you'll see that our standard practices of renaming the weeds, and as we work for Unidata, that's funded by the National Science Foundation. We're here to help support you guys. So at any time, you can shoot us an email, and we'll be there to help you out. That's why we exist, trying to make your lives a little easier.
All right. Well, with that, I guess we can start going here. If you want to see the schedule, I guess Pete probably sent this out before the website for the workshop here. If you hadn't seen it, it's unidata.github.io/unidata-python-workshop. And that has, if you go there, that's the general workshop page. And then we have a page here for the SSEC AOS workshop.
I think that link was in the link that, or in the email that I and Wayne both sent out. So.
And that has I won't call it a draft, but that has the rough outline. I'm sure we'll get off schedule here real quick, but we'll do our best to stick to it. And just in general, if you guys have questions, feel free to stop us. It's about getting you guys the information you need. We both already know this stuff, so it doesn't disrupt us to get interrupted here. And we want to make sure we don't leave anyone behind, and we don't lose anyone. So please, raise your hand, stop us. If I blow by something, feel free to raise your hand. Just get my attention. I need to slow down. I don't want to lose you guys. We're going to start this morning here with Git. So you got 2 hours of me talking. I was talking about Git and then Conda. And that'll lay the foundation for then slowly ramping up on more and more Python stuff. So first off, who does not have Git installed on the computer they are working on? One.
I think I have it.
So if you want to check, the real easy way,
And something came up.
if you do Git, can you see that, or is that probably too low for the back of the class?
I'd say that's too low.
Okay. How do I solve that problem?
I have that.
Well, I don't want to keep clearing. That any better? Because now it's all the way at the top. All right. Well, if you do git dash dash version, that'll tell you. I want to give you your version. More importantly, just see if the darn thing will work. So if you try that, does that break for anyone?
I don't know if I've installed it or not. I just found out I was coming here late last.
If you've got the command line tools installed, it's probably on there. If not, I can.
So if you can open up a bash window or whatever terminal and just type that.
I got 171 though for the version, not 274. Is that going to be a problem?
I don't think so, because we're not going to be doing any kind of advanced Git stuff. We're just going bare bones basics. Just
getting
minimum you need up and running, so there shouldn't be any important differences in that version. Just like a lot of it's just changing the settings and little fine detail semantics is what has kind of maybe changed over that time, not much else. Also, a general question, how many of you guys are not comfortable at the command line? You know, you don't really like bringing up the terminal and typing in commands.
Anybody not comfortable on the command line? With bash. So,
All
they all claim to
right.
be.
Wow. That's different than it usually goes. So, all right.
Brian, do you know how to initialize the Xcode install? Is it smart enough, or you just type GCC that it'll?
Is it Xcode select?
Dash dash install.
All right.
It's all part of the journey, right?
Yeah, well, that's how it works on here. I'll go through the general thing here. How many of you guys have ever used version control? Okay, so a fair amount of hands. Which one? So we're talking SVN. Okay. Okay. How many of you guys have actually used Git before?
I've not.
Have used Git. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured would happen. Okay. So in general, for those of you who haven't used version control, it's a really nice tool to keep track of what you've done to your code over time. So, you know, oftentimes what we'll, you know, maybe if you haven't used version control before, what you would probably do is, I have a working version and I need to go test something out new. So I'm going to say, okay, copy that file to this whatever .back. And we're going to have that copy sitting there, and now we're going to make changes to it. And we'll see if we can get it to work. And then if we like it, okay, we'll delete the backup copy, and then that's our new version. When in actuality, what happens is we make the backup copy, and we leave the backup copy there. And then we come back a few months later, and we make another backup copy, because I can't remember what that backup was about. So we'll make a new one, .back.2. And then we'll keep going, and I get a half-working version here. And so you can very quickly end up with a directory full of, you know, 6, 10, 15 different copies of the same code. And you have no way of knowing other than, okay, I think this one's the right one because it's just the .py file. So what version control gets you is a way to checkpoint yourself. I mean, even if you're not collaborating with a bunch of other developers, if you have your own code, for my dissertation work, this became invaluable just to know, I know what the working state of my code is. I know the rationale of changes I've made over time. And if you can get over the early speed bumps in learning it, it's a very nice tool to keep you from shooting yourself in the foot. So we'll walk through a few commands here with Git and just see how it works and hopefully get you guys over that initial hump. So everybody seems to be squared away with Git.
Does Git work only with Python programs, or can you do anything Fortran or C? Or
Git does everything, and it has taken off and powers, I'd say 3/4 would be a rough guess of the open source software in active use.
But for example, Ryan and I both used Git to version control our LaTeX dissertation files.
Yep. So
We
LaTeX,
can use it for anything.
we use it for Threads data server, which is Java. We use it for Python stuff. You can use it for C. It powers the Linux kernel development, et cetera, et cetera. So it
So Ryan,
works
just
well.
a heads up, we have I think some machines have like Git 1.7 installed.
okay. Yeah, so he
And so I think given what we're gonna do, it should be fine.
Should be
but
fine.
We may have some hiccups.
if things don't work, we'll do my best to go slow. And if you don't get the expected results here,
In the
Let
later
us know.
versions of Git, some of the commands got less verbose and a little easier. And so,
we should be all right. I think we'll be
yeah,
fine.
we should be fine then.
All right. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to just make a directory to just dump some test code or some files. It doesn't have to be code. We're just going to play with setting up a Git repository, adding some files to it, checking them in, and then a few other notions here. So first thing, I'm just going to make a directory. I'm going to call it test code. You can call it whatever you want. I am not creative when it comes to naming things. So make their test code and cd into it. All right, so I have an empty directory. And the first thing I'm going to do to set up Git in that directory is I'm just going to say git bit init, as in initialization. Is that big enough for everyone to see back there, or I can probably make this even bigger? Good, bad, bigger?
Okay, but don't go down too much further.
Okay, gotcha. I'm gonna solve this problem right here.
So as low as you can go right there.
Right there?
Okay.
All right. Now I don't have to keep clearing because I want to lose the history so you guys can still see it. All right, so git init. And you see you get the line initialized empty Git repository. So now we're ready to start actually adding files to it, committing them, and whatnot. One other thing here is usually nice, especially if you're collaborating with others, is to set up each commit you make, and we'll go into a little more what a commit is, has your name and email address in it. And so it's usually nice when you're starting off here to set that up so that every commit has the proper email address. So we can do that with git config. And we say, let's see, hold on. My place here in my head. So if you do git config-h, and that works for pretty much all the Git commands, git command-h.
That put config.//h.
Just git config-h or --help, I believe also works. That gets you the help page. So if you ever get lost, that's a good place to start to try and figure out the right semantics of the commands. And what I wanted here was this --add. So git config --add. So I want to set user.email, and we'll say rma@ucar.edu. You feel free to, this is just playing around, so it doesn't have to be an accurate email address. It can be whatever you want, but in general, that'll play nice if you're using GitHub and things like that to kind of hook up commits to your account. So just git config --add user.email, the email address. And then one more here, git config add user.name. Put my name in quotes there.
Long number of plugins.
Did you put your name in quotes?
Oh, no, I did not.
Yep. So it's important to, if you're going to put a space, your first and last name, make sure you enclose your name in quotes. Oh.
And then user.
Are there a limited list of valid things that you
And
can
then
add, or is this kind of an ad hoc? User.email, user.name,
I don't know what happens if you
user.bestfriend in there, what would happen?
go to town. I'm going to find out.
Thought, same thing.
So the question is, can we put anything here?
User.name and-
I am not creative. So we're going to put food bar because that's just what I feel like. And it'll take it, but Git won't do anything with it. I only think it'll go into the commit message. So it doesn't really do any error checking here. It's just looking for certain values when you use it. But that's in general how you can configure Git if you want to set up how it prints diffs. So differences between files, there's configuration for that. There's configuration for all sorts of behavior in there. We're not going to really delve into all the nitty-gritty settings here.
Okay. I was just wondering, how would I know what are valid ones that are going to be used? Is there a way to kind of look up what's going to be used? Like if I couldn't remember it as user.name, I thought it was, sort of USR.name. How would I know it's user.name?
Command git dash config, does that, let's see. Get too into the weeds here. Okay, so actually, if you go far enough, you do get the man page for git dash config. So that does eventually get into the full set at the bottom there. And often, actually, my best thing is just Googling it. It's quicker for me to go over to the web browser, Command T, and bring up a new tab and go search for it. It's practically muscle memory at this point for looking up these things. All right, so everyone got their user set up, and we've got an empty Git repository. So the next thing to do is we need some kind of file to track. I'm going to use Vim here. Feel free to use whatever text editor of choice. I don't know what's installed on the Linux systems.
Either Nedit or gedit is probably on there. VI is on there for sure.
Okay.
Might be.
So.
We have to create the file, or can we just copy in an existing one from elsewhere?
You could do that.
As long as it's a text file.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Because we're going to make some changes, and it'll be easier to see what the differences are if we use a text file. Don't copy in a binary. Any kind of code will work. Create a new text file.
The user stuff, is that per repository?
So there is an option with config to set, when we did these up here, we could get config. Actually, I set, let's actually put it at the front. So if we did this, if we set a global,
Then it does it.
it puts it in a config file in your root in your account. And so you can set that once and have it go for all usage of Git. And then you can also have a global one and then override that within a repository. So if you have, I have stuff I work on with my personal account, I have stuff I work on with my UCAR account, and one of those is global. I couldn't tell you which one right now, and then I'll override it as needed.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
So how do I, what copies the file from someplace else into
CP is copy.
copy?
Yeah. So I'm just going to use Vim. I'm going to open up, we'll call it test.py. Out of curiosity, as I get this going, how many of you have never done any Python before whatsoever? All right. So we'll take this slow. It's not my intention to actually do an exhaustive coverage of Python's itself syntax. More, we're going to cover the libraries and stuff, but we don't want to leave you behind. So if I do something that confuses you, please stop me. So right now, open up a Python file, and I'm just going to make a real simple one. I'm going to do the typical hello world in Python. So we say print, parentheses, quote, hello world.
Are we using some editors?
Yeah, I'm using Vim, gedit, nedit, VI. I don't know if what else Mac might have on the command line.
You can use the text editor or
You can use VI, and the two things you need are I to insert, escape to get out of that, and :Q to quit.
By the way, the one on there is a line. That's not part of
Yeah.
so.
There. Now there's no one.
Okay, typed in ready for I don't know. And we'll
Let's see. So, everyone with me so far? Ish. Got a file with some text in it? No. All right. Well, I don't see any no's. So, right, quit that. So, if we want to add this file to Git, we say Git. We want to add, so Git with commits. Let me step back for a second. A commit is essentially the checkpoint in your history of development. So you want to say, this is the set of content I want to hold on to, or changes I've made that I want to save. And so what you do is you explicitly add files or even parts of files to this commit. You kind of build it up, and then in one command, then you say, okay, I've got it assembled how I want, I commit it. It sounds complex when I say it like that. So the first thing we do here is if we do git add and say test.py, that adds the entire, everything I've done to test.py to the commit that we're building. And then I can do git status to see where we are right now. So we see a few things about on branch master. We'll get to that in a second. See, we're on the initial commit here because we just initialized the repository. And then we see a list of changes to be committed. And so we see this new file here, test.py.
Git and status tells us what?
Tells us the repository, the status of the repository, files that we've changed, files that are sitting there but we haven't done anything with, or in this case now we have, changes to be committed.
Okay.
So we've built up, we have everything we want, so we say git commit.
This is kind of a registering or
Saying we're checked, but we've got all the changes we want together. I've said this change, this change. I want them all saved, and now we're checkpointing it. We're committing it to the history of the repository, and so when we say git commit, we're brought up into an editor here with an opportunity to make a message to ourselves. What was the reason for this change? In this case, we're just going to say add new file. Usually you want to be somewhat more descriptive, but there's really not a lot to say here.
How did you get to that?
Git, let's see, here, let me quit out of this real quick. So git commit. And we see here, if I didn't give it a message, it said I'm not doing it because you didn't give me a commit message. So git commit, C-O-M-M-I-T is how you Actually, instead of bringing up the editor, you can also do is -M, put your message here.
I'm holding something here I can get out of.
Probably Vim. So if you hit colon, Q,
No rights and slash change.
okay, so do you want to save those changes or you just want to get out?
Just get it.
Okay, colon Q, exclamation point. Colon Q, bang.
All right.
The wonders that are as Vim or VI.
I still haven't done my.
Yeah, so we'll do, probably for the sake of avoiding Vim here, we can just use the command line, use the -M option, and you just give it your commit message in quotes alongside it. Then it won't bring that up, and we'll stay out of Vim world. So we hit enter. Okay. One file change, one insertion. We created the file, so we've made one commit.
That was the reason. What we just gave is the reason.
Yep. And so if we hit get space log, we can see the log of all the commits we've done. So now we see, here's the author, like I set up before with the user. We get a date, stamp on it, and we get the message.
And that's in the nature of a comment, just so I'll know in the future why I did this.
If you're collaborating with others, so they know. But most often, yes, yourself, 6 months from now, why in the world did I do this? Or frequently when I'm working, what idiot put this in here? Oh, I'm the idiot that did that. That's, yes.
I've done that.
When you first opened it in editing mode, you would put that message on the first line.
So when I did the commit like this, it probably won't. So if you do get commit without a message on the command line, it brings up an editor for you to type in a whole bunch of stuff. So you have a full text editor to.
Does it matter where you put it?
No. So there's usually, it can be as long as you want. There's a general best practice. So what you often do, and Vim actually will color code this if you have it set up. You do a short one line at the top, put an empty line, and then if you want more explanatory text, you put that after that for a big paragraph. So if you really need to go, I tracked down this bug to this point and this point, and that's why we needed this, you can put all that there.
But you put it in the beginning, though.
Yeah, you put a short one-liner at the top in the first line. But generally speaking, Git won't break if you don't do that. It just kind of a best practice. Works well with GitHub and things like that. Okay, who's not lost? All right. So everyone's ready to keep going on adding to that file. What we're going to do next is edit that file and make a change to it. Go away, email. Okay. So
Do we need to use Vim as the editor? So we can use
let's see if I can. On Mac, I could open the file. I'm trying to think what's the best. See, a lot of Mac. Vim's probably going to be the easiest. That's what I generally use. Didn't want this to become a Vim tutorial, but Vim test.py. So open it in your text editor of choice. You can follow along with Vim if that works for you. But we're going to reopen the file we just edited. You call it test. I called it test.py, whatever you called it. We're going to go ahead and add a new line here. So I hit O to open. I'll put a blank line there. Create a function called to Fahrenheit.
dark green color. I can't read anything.
That is a horrible color. Okay.
Syntax off.
Thank you. Is that better? You can see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Harder for me to make sense of the code, but that is okay. I shouldn't need syntax highlighting for this.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I opened that up, but I'm not able to edit anything. What do I do?
Is it in Vim? Or is it?
Yeah, you're in VI. You need to get insert control and start.
Okay.
When you're all done, hit escape.
Yep.
And then colon WQ.
Okay. So what I'm doing, and for those of you who haven't seen Python before, I'm making a function. So defining a function. In Python, that starts with the def word here, so def space, and then I give it a name for the function. And I tell what arguments it's going to take. In this case, I'm calling the one argument Celsius, and then we put a colon at the end of the line. And then to make this function, every line that's indented is what's part of this function. So in this case, I'm going to say return 1.8 times Celsius plus 32.
You're putting under the tabs at the beginning of the line have significance in Python.
Yeah, I believe that I have spaces here. Tabs work. Yeah, so the white space is significant. Basically, that's how you define the block within the function. So, I could also say we wanted to put a few more lines here. Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times Celsius plus 32. So we could write it like this. So the important part is all the lines that are indented are within this function. If I was to, unindent that line instead, then the function would only contain this one line. It wouldn't have this return statement.
When you said return, Fahrenheit, yeah, okay.
So I mucked around with it to add an extra line so we can see with the Python white space here. The indentation is what defines the limits of the function, the code that's within there. So we need to have this line indented in order for it to actually be part of the function.
Kind of like what you do for syntax in Fortran or C, but it's required in Python.
Exactly. So you should be indenting your code in C and Python, or C and Fortran anyways. In Python, that's the only way. There are no curly braces. There are no end functions. There's just def starts it, def in the colon starts it, and then the indentation defines it, the limits. Yeah.
The spaces around the equal sign and all that stuff there.
No, only at the beginning of the line.
And coming from Fortran world, we don't have type like floating point, integer, and all that. You just mix them all up.
Yeah. So that's what makes Python so relatively easy to do things in, is because you don't have to concern yourself with setting up the types up front. Now, that's not to say it's not strongly typed. Fahrenheit very much is a floating point number here. It's just because we started with 1.8 times, this, we assume what's coming in Celsius is a float. If I pass in a string.
There are some advantages to knowing you're
Oh,
with an integer or floating point.
absolutely. There are drawbacks. Say what?
So how do you know whether you're working with a floating point or an integer?
Python will pass based on what it finds, assuming it's a number. So if you put an integer into Celsius, by doing a multiplication with a float, or I guess that 1.8 would be done as a double?
Probably.
But isn't that kind of dangerous? You don't actually know what it did. It's
So
you type somewhere along the line, include it in, and all of a sudden you're just up in the air. Like, do I have an integer or floating point? What am I working with?
So you the coder here, you make the decision. I assume Celsius is a number I can work with. This code will break if you pass it a string. This code will break if you give it anything other than something that can be multiplied by 1.8 sensibly.
Can you specify whether you wanted it an integer or floating point?
Not to the interpreter that's running the code. You can put it in docs, which is how it's usually done in Python. You mean you document well and you write tests to make sure the function behaves as you think, but you don't have a typing system or compiler to catch
That just seems
snafus like that.
crazy, because I could be somewhere along the line, I could make something an integer or a floating point, never know I did it. And how would I even find where?
Well,
why-
Tests, lots of tests.
Also, at this point, we're using base Python. So there is a library we're going to be using called NumPy, which is the array library. And there you can define your data type. So when you're doing array math, you can force the issue if you want.
You can force it somewhat. You still have the same challenges open up. It's a dynamically typed language. And so you make the trade-off for not doing your types up front to speed development. You know, I just wrote 1.8 times Celsius. I didn't have to think about what types do I want here. I just want math to work. It gives you a lot of power.
I think it takes away power.
Not in my experience, having
You don't
done.
have to think about it, means you don't have any.
Well, you think about it. You just don't have. Having done C++, I don't want to get too. We'll take it offline, but there, and I'd be happy to continue this conversation offline. But the crux of it is, by not having to spend so much focusing on specifying every last little type of the compiler, you can speed up development. The downside is you need to be very careful, and the best way to protect yourself is write lots of tests.
We're trying to see typically promote an integer to a floating point if it makes.
Yes, but then you got to be careful about your return values on your functions and all that stuff. So, but most importantly is everyone see how I defined a function here and we're returning a value out of it. Okay.
Sorry, in fact, if you misspelled Fahrenheit, I have no.
F-A-H-R-E-N.
Wow. Well,
He's a radar guy.
you know what? I'm going to leave it like that and we'll come back to it. So, colon right quit to get out of Vim. Now, if I do a git status again, we see here it says modified test.py. So we've edited that file. We've put changes in there.
What did you, what was the last thing you typed, git status?
Git status, git space status. And another helpful one here, if we want to see, okay, that file's been modified, what did I do to it? We can do git space diff, D-I-F-F. And so now we get a little difference here showing, okay, I've added these lines to the file. That's what's new. Can look at that, say, yes, that's what I want. No, I need to go make some more changes to that. But if I'm happy with it, we can say git add test.py again.
Why add instead of commit? Seems like you already added the.
Oh, yeah, well, red is on the end.
So if we do git commit, we see no changes added to commit, changes not staged for commit. So this is that two-stage process I kind of tried to explain, but it's kind of takes some wrapping your head around a little bit. And that's one of the challenges of Git, but it's one of the features that makes it work well once you get used to it. And so you have to kind of build the commit. You have to say, these are the changes I want to be part of this commit. I have the power to actually, if I changed a whole bunch of files, I can only, commit some of those changes. I can say, I've changed these 3 files, but this commit should only have 1, so that when I go back, either some of those aren't ready to be committed, or I want to separate them out so that I can make sense of, so I don't have a book as a commit log, but I have atomic changes of, first I added this calculation, then I added this calculation. So it kind of, allows you to, just like you want to break up your code into nice, easily, things you can easily, that's what I'm looking for. You can easily make sense of in your head. Same thing's good with commits to your code. You kind of want atomic changes that you can go back and there are other benefits to having that. But at any rate, you need to build up the commit. So to add, what we do, it's kind of, they call it the staging area. So we're going to add test.py to that staging area. So that's what the add will do. After we've added it, we can go back and look at status again. And we've gone from earlier, we had this modified under changes not staged for commit up here. And now when we do status after the add, we see, okay, changes to be committed. So that means that file is now going to be part of the commit if we commit right now.
So you could have a number of files that you've changed and did the add. But you actually only make a documented notation when you do the commit.
Yes. So unlike CVS and Subversion, it's a two-stage assemble the commit, then commit.
Right, but it's only at the commit time you say this is what I've changed.
Yes. Yes.
Right, or this is your documentation for that.
And there is the ability with add to actually only add part of the changes in one file. That's something that was, I think, almost impossible to do with Subversion. Whereas here, I can have a 1,000-line file, make changes in unrelated parts, and only commit parts of the file.
Oh, that's too much.
Not going through that right now. I'm just letting you know it exists out there. That's beyond beginner level Git.
Can I ask one question, maybe irrelevant? I see you've got this. What's this annotation you've got on the right-hand side of your screen that says master?
So that's some pretty prompt stuff that I've set up with Bash. It just, because I'm working in Git so frequently, it's easier to put that information over there. Nope, that's not expected. That's me working in my development environment. All right, so we've modified test.py again. So we'll git commit -m. And if for some reason we wanted that, we were talking earlier about the longer commit messages, I can do something like this, -m add to Fahrenheit, -m for another message here, and basically put them in separate paragraphs. So I can say add to Fahrenheit. Yes, it's misspelled. And then second message here to give a little more rationale behind it, And I'll leave a note to myself saying we need to do this temperature conversion. So if I hit enter now with both those -m's, we've made the commit.
By the way, our apostrophes as good as quotes or one of them.
As long as you're consistent, you'll be fine. I usually use double because I don't often need the double quote within my commit message where I often need the apostrophe. Now if I do the git log after the commit, so we see we got that one line and then we got the second message here. All right, so coming back around, everyone with me so far? Kind of, yeah. Okay, so that's just basic edit file, commit, edit file, commit. One of the things that really makes it nice to use version control is if you want to test something out, not sure if it's going to live long term, but you still want this notion of I want a log of what I've done, especially if I, testing something out, get it halfway, need to come back, 3 days later and, figure out, still have that around. So for that, we have a notion of branches. And for those of you who've used CVS and Subversion, branching was kind of a big hassle, only undertaken if you really, really needed it. With Git, branches are cheap, easy, and used frequently. And so the usual development model actually is whenever you're going to do a new feature or you're going to do anything new, we're given this default branch of master. That's your main development line. Doesn't have any special name. It's just kind of called master by convention, but you can actually call it whatever you want. But often you leave that alone. You don't make a lot of changes on that, but you can say, okay, I need a new branch. I'm going to go work over here and leave master alone. It's working. If I need to go run some research results real quick, I can get back to master and it's all still functional, but I have this branch over here where I've been breaking things relentlessly in the name of science. So, so to make a new branch, this is one of those things that the name of the commands can throw off the new users. So we do git checkout -b, and we'll say, I'm going to call this branch Celsius. So
B is for branch, minus B is
for the B is for create new branch.
branch.
So if we run that, we see we switch to new branch Celsius. And I, of course, over here have it telling me that you don't have that. So the easiest way to see where you are is, again, if you look at git status. We have no changes, but we do see now it says you're on branch Celsius.
Thanks. I got switched to new branch Celsius, and then how did you get the rest?
Git status.
Oh, get started.
Yep.
So if I were to log out, stop them going terminal or close the terminal, bring it back up, will I be by default back at the master?
No. So the checking out branch actually is modifying things at the file system level. So you leave and come back, you're still the Git repository is still on the Celsius branch
Okay,
here.
so the best thing to do in development code would be to do a git status just to make sure that.
Right. Yep. When you first come back from where, come back, get to the office in the morning. Okay, where am I? Git status is usually a good place to start.
And we can always post, for those who know how to edit like your bash configuration file, we can post the magic that does
these
what
things.
branch you're on and if it's clean or not. Like if you add something new or modify a file, it'll change from green to red. And so oh, I've got stuff I haven't committed yet. And so we can get that posted up on the website properly.
Yeah, if those things are interesting to people, absolutely. Because that's the reason I have this over here is because I get tired of typing git status all the time. And for those of you who want to look into it further, there's also a notion of aliasing commands in Git. So if you want to, shorten it, because often I'll shorten these to 2 letters like SVN had. So for the purpose of the workshop, I'm not using those, but I do have them aliased to shorter commands because I get tired of typing. At any rate, so we're on a new branch Celsius. So I want to make some commits over here and test some things out. So I'm going to go back and edit test.py again. Don't do that. Just a second. There we go. So I'm going to make another function here at the bottom. I'm sure this is coming as a surprise to no one. All right. Find a new function, and I'm just going to do the one-liner here because I'm lazy. Return.
If I were to say, following his question back here, 32 decimal, would be no, that would not cause a problem with.
Nope. All right. Anyone need this up there longer? All right. So I've saved it. Git status. All right, I've modified test.py. Git add test.py. And git commit. Add to yes. So same set of steps we've done a couple times now.
question. How do you know you switched branches?
So after we switched one, when you created it, it said switched. Whoop, don't do that. Up here, or up here. And then if you type get status, the first line it says is what branch you're on. So if you're ever confused what the state of the repository is, get status has pretty much all the information you need if you can get used to parsing it. So the first line says on branch Celsius. Then you've got the changes not staged for commit here. And that was the file I've edited. Then I added it, then I committed it.
Is there a way to list all the branches?
Yes, there is. And for that, we use get branch. So that's another way to see what branch you're on if you don't want to use get status is you type get branch, it lists them all, and then it puts a star next to the one you're currently on.
What's show branch? I already used that.
What was that?
Show branch.
Show branch. I have not used that one. Let's see, get show branch H.
It just shows that show hyphen branch.
Yeah, that's I did the help on. I'm just trying to see.
You need you don't have the branch name to show everything with the hierarchy of all the branches.
Okay. It looks like I also wanted to get lower level stuff. Yeah, the easiest way I find is just to use the get branch, just to show them all. Because often you want to see what are all the branches I have, what are all the different various things I have in different working states. If we look at our log here now, after we committed, here we see we have the first two commits we did, and then we just have this one we just did. Okay. Now, if we want to go back to master, we can do git checkout master. That'll switch your branch back. We see it says switch to branch master. And now if I do a git log, you see we no longer have that third commit. We can also, with log, instead of by default, it's just looking at the branch you're on. Instead, I can tell it what branch I want to see the log for. So if I say git log Celsius, now I'm back to looking at the log for the Celsius branch. I see that third commit. So we have a master branch that has the first two commits. We got a Celsius branch that has now a third commit on top of it.
So when you switch branch, then you didn't use the minus B. Do I need
No.
minus B to go back to Celsius?
Nope. The B is only when you create a new branch.
Okay.
You can use get branch to create a branch and then switch to it. It's easiest to just check out -B, new branch, and it just switches over. And
The checkout command itself means what in general? What?
switch branch.
Switch branch.
The way we're using it here means switch branch. There are ways to use checkout. If I go back to the history here, let's see. Okay, so if we see here when I did the get status with test.py modified, when I had the file edited and I hadn't committed it, we have the suggestion here from status. It says use get checkout -- file to discard changes in the working directory. So checkout in general is about switching the content that's available, or that's in your working directory. So it serves double duty here as changing between branches. And then also you can just reset the content of individual files using it.
Is it normal in the kind of Git plan, as it were, to have tokens in your file that get expanded like you do with SVN to put, like a header or like
There's no built,
ID or
right,
something?
I know what you mean. There's no standard, like Subversion had it built in, if I remember correctly.
Well, like, for example, I'd often put the, $ID $.
Right.
I wouldn't put maybe the entire change, because
Right.
it gets ugly, but at least it gives me like a version number of who edited and when. Kind of thing.
Right. So Git doesn't have any of that built in.
Right.
But it does have a generic notion of hooks that you can, scripts that are run when you commit or when you pull down new changes or when you want to put changes to a remote server, all these things, all these different levels of hooks.
Yeah.
So you could, I'm sure out there on the internet, there is documentation for making a hook that would resolve some kind of arbitrary
Okay.
tag you put in your file with that. I know there are hooks out there that will say, run your Python code through some kind of style checker to clean up white space and whatnot, or things like that. So you
Maybe
can,
it's not as useful. I mean, my understanding about Git is it's all about change sets, whereas SVN's about like a version number.
yeah,
And that was kind of like, it was always useful to me to have a version number, because I'd say, just like you were saying, oh, what's this one here? It's because I've taken it and moved it somewhere else out of the SVN directory
Right.
for distribution or something.
Gotcha.
I want to have a look at the version.
yeah. No, the Git does not have a notion of versions on files. What it has is, like you said, change sets, and they're identified by these nasty sets of hexadecimal numbers.
Right.
So yeah, they don't have a notion of that. So we've got a branch Celsius with stuff we like, and we want to put that in now, put that back on our master branch. Like we want to merge those changes onto our master branch. So this one's pretty straightforward in terms of command name. It's git merge. And so since we're on the master branch currently, I can just say git merge Celsius. And that will say, take the changes on the Celsius branch and merge them back onto my master branch.
Oh, okay, I gotta, please commit your changes or stash them before you can merge. So that's something I didn't do.
So if you, I think you didn't commit the changes to test.py. So if you do a git checkout Celsius, you git add test.py. Most of you, that shouldn't do anything. If you do a git commit -m, give it some kind of message here. What did I call it? I said add to Celsius.
I got the same problem as I got Celsius, not something we can merge.
Well, that one's interesting. So did the commit work? Let's real quick.
You know what? Let's do that.
I got some changes.
Okay.
Return.
Spell it.
No, that's it. Change.
Okay.
No.
So if I tried to just live with my spelling mistake, I did that.
There you go.
Okay.
So
Okay, it's there.
It
Now,
comes up with a
Git
message that
status.
says, can't merge this thing. There's a chance that you're trying to merge a branch that doesn't exist.
Status
There's maybe a
Yeah.
typo or something like that.
Okay.
So you can always do just git branch and see, what do I have?
So your
And
branch
something I do
master.
often is I copy from that
Yes, sir.
output,
Do a
paste it
git
in the
branch.
command line to make sure it's the exact same spellings I've used and all of that.
So let's do
is
a.
taken care of. Now, occasionally you'll get
Oh,
merge
I mean,
conflicts.
that's right.
That's
Some
right.
different
You can
ones,
you can check out. You can just git checkout Celsius. Git checkout.
I'm sorry.
Git
Oh,
space
get,
checkout.
oh, get.
Out. Space Celsius. Okay. What? Oh, you modified hello.
Yeah, well, but
The problem is that like it's the fact that it was modified.
there's test file. There it is. I'm on it.
Right, but that no, that was not the one that's problematic though. It's the hello file.
I'm getting blown away.
Okay.
Yeah, the only two things I ever.
Okay, now try git checkout. Git. Now do the git commit or git add.
Okay.
Test that line. Yep. Now you can do a git commit. You can bring up the editor, or you can do the dash M and give it a message. Hit I and give it a message. I for insert is what your name.
Oh, okay, I don't know.
Well, if you just hit I to insert, we'll
Okay.
type the message, add to Celsius. Okay. Escape.
Okay. Hey, I don't know.
I know. Colon. WQ. Okay.
All right.
Now you should be able to switch back to master. So git checkout master. You do git checkout master, like there. And then git.
Check out, command not found.
Oh, git checkout.
Get.
All right. And then git merge. Celsius.
Sorry.
Celsius.
I just had this thing upgraded to L capital.
There we go.
Notice there's like slash bins line,
Right.
slash bins directory.
When I say get add, I'm adding.
That wasn't a lot of stuff.
You are adding
Thing I used to start my-
changes in a file to the current change set you're building.
Okay.
So you're assembling a commit, the checkpoint that you want.
Okay, but I still, all right, but still haven't committed.
Correct.
That's still not a commit.
You don't commit until you say git commit. Then it's committed. All right. Everyone else follow up to that point. So we reached the end of our hour on Git. I'm happy to take more questions on Git right now. There's a lot more we could go through. You could spend probably an entire day learning about the ins and outs of Git, but this is enough at least, if you wanted to track your code on a daily basis, keep your thesis code working, keep branches. I've got to, keep a branch over here that's working so I can keep getting things to my advisor while I come over here and break things, get working. You've got at least enough to get that going.
So far we've been entirely working on our local machine.
Yes.
But there is that whole side of pushing off to something like.
Absolutely. We will cover some of that with GitHub tomorrow. Sean should be doing some of that. And in a second, we'll be cloning down from the workshops materials that are online. So we'll do some of that. Yeah, in the interest of time, I think I'm punting on the remote stuff, but we can certainly talk offline about that more if you want.
When you say cloning down, is that just creating a local repository of the same files to work on, or a branch of the same files on our local machine?
It's actually a copy of the repository on our local machine.
Okay.
And that's one of the nice things about Git versus some of the others. Subversion, you've got to have the separate server set up, and you can only commit if you can access that server. With Git, everything's on. When you have an entire copy of the repository on your machine with Git, so you don't have to be online to make commits and track your history and all that. You can, the usual example is working on an airplane and, be able to do development. I'm not sure how many people in this room would actually do development on an airplane, but, if you're in the field or something and you need to make changes and you want to commit the history, you can do that without internet access. And you don't need access to a server. You don't have to deal with being able to VPN in from outside. You can, everything you need is only local until you want to distribute those changes to other people, and then you need internet access. But you can do all the, log, commit, whatnot locally, and you have the entire history. Everything from the first commit to the last, you have all of it on your machine.
Ryan, you say you don't know how many people in this room would work on an airplane. How many of you worked on producing results for an AMS presentation on the plane to AMS? I'm not going to judge. Okay. Well, now you can check in those changes to your work that you're doing on the airplane at the last minute. And
in doing that, you avoid the need to come back 3 weeks after AMS and say, "Now, what did I do? Why did I edit this file?" That's the, for as far as from a scientific workflow perspective, that's why I usually like to promote Git, because it allows you to at least track your own thoughts, get your own version history. And, if you edit the code and you don't know why, if you make sure you commit when you have a working version, you can always go back here. I guess I will show one more thing here on the Git side. We didn't really cover this yet. So I'm going to go back to master. We should all be on the master branch. So Git checkout master if you're not already on the master branch. So I'm going to edit the test.py one more time. And make a new function here. Actually, no, I'm going to edit to Celsius. And I was playing with things, so I changed this to a 190.5, just because I was seeing if it would make values work any better in my code.
now you get some turbulence on the plane.
There you go. That's an even better one. Mistyped, and then I stopped working, had to put the laptop away. So get out of this. I save the changes. So now if I do a git status, got the file that's modified. If I do a git diff, look at the changes. Okay, that's weird. So I don't want those changes. They're bad. Just get rid of them, get me back to the place because I committed when it was working. So if can't remember the command to get rid of it because I have it aliased away. But here we go. If we do a git status, we see this suggestion here. Use git checkout -- file to discard changes in the working directory. So git checkout -- test.py. Run that. Now we see changes are gone. So if you have stuff that you don't want anymore, if you've made changes to a file that's no good, that's the way. And it does tell you that, at least when you do a git status, it gives you a breadcrumb here to try and tell you here's how to get things back to where they were.
Can it keep version numbers and all this? I mean, can it keep an old version so you go back?
You can't. You don't need to save the old version. So if we go to log, we've got Git has every version of that file, the contents of every version of the file accessible. So if we want that, this is where these commands start to make more sense, but you have to get deeper down. if I want the content from, say, I want what test.py looked like at this commit. I don't have to write the whole commit. I can just give it, the first few numbers as long as it's unique. So I'm grabbing this. So what I'm saying is I want to check out this commit, and I really only want test.py out of it. If I do that, I'll just print it out. So we went back to the version of the file that didn't have 2 Celsius. So it doesn't keep versions around, but it keeps the contents. The contents of every file at every commit is available within.
I don't understand how you got that hexadecimal number to come up.
From the log.
From the log. If you do git log, first line of everything is that it's a hash. If you really want to know the details.
Is there some kind of cheat sheet on this?
I will go grab one real quick. I know they exist. I don't have one handy, but
I've Googled a specific site so many times that my Google search bubble now takes me there when I want to go.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
How the heck do I do this?
Pretty sure Google knows I like Git,
Yeah.
or at least use Git a lot.
Yeah.
But I'll dig one up to make sure we can distribute to the class. We do have on here a previous presentation on this. So if you go to the workshop site, there's a set of slides for this block here, going through it. Just elected to try and do something more live rather than following along slides.
Is Git officially part of Python, or is it just general?
No, this is the one thing we're doing today that's not only Python, but Git is pretty much tool number one if you want to work with the wider world of Python open source projects that are out there. And in general, it's a good tool to have in the toolbox for doing, even local development, just so you don't get yourself turned around.
It started with, Linus Torvalds and the Linux kernel development that he's been doing. It started, and if you know Linus at all, you can imagine what he would say about SVN not being sufficient and probably more colorful language than that. And so he built his own version control system, and that's just taken off everywhere.
And who did that?
Linus.
Linus Torvalds built Git. He's the guy who created Linux. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you really wanted to go, you don't have to imagine what Linus said about Subversion. You can go on YouTube and watch what he said at some kind of Google talk he did once about his thoughts on Subversion, if you're really curious about those things. But at any rate, that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about on Git. So, running a little bit behind, we're all right. So
That would help.
what was that?
That would help.
Yeah, we will dig one out. I'm going to leave you to check out the notebooks. Oh, no, actually, I need it. Okay, so, yeah, no, absolutely.
If I were to change that directory name, test code,
Doesn't matter.
okay, so it's not going to break the
Nope.
branches.
Everything's inside it, and otherwise it doesn't care where it lives. So, going to start to need some things from the workshop repository. So, one more command we're going to do real quick here is git clone. And so we created a repository from scratch when we started. This time we want to just go copy the entire repository that someone else has hosted. And so for that, you use clone. I just went back to my home directory. So if you go back up out of your test code, whatever directory, or wherever you want to keep this stuff, we're going to go grab all the workshop materials now. So wherever you want to keep those, and we can just do git clone. Make sure that's big enough. Is that legible?
Yeah.
Too low. Okay. Better. So what clone does is it goes and talks to the server and downloads every bit of information in the repository and makes your own copy of it locally.
I don't need to do that now for this class. That is assuming that.
Well, actually, that's what we're going to need next. So go ahead and do that.
I should
Yeah.
Does that bring down also all the branches that exist, committed and uncommitted?
Everything that I've pushed up to GitHub. So everything that's on at this repository place. So anything that exists only on my laptop, it won't pull down. But anything I've put up there, it'll bring all those down. Yeah.
Ryan, did you mention
Let's see if we can bring the Wi-Fi to a grinding halt.
a branch is just the changes and not a full-blown copy of the repo?
I have not touched on that. So if you're wondering, with branches, it's not a big copy. It's just a very cheap kind of pointer to things. So Git branches are very cheap. I think it's the versionator copies of all the materials in the repository, if I remember correctly. But if you're worried about performance or using extra disks with a bunch of branches, don't be. They are very cheap in the way they're implemented.
This is complaining about not having a correct SSL certificate. Does it need special permissions?
No. Trying to think how to get around this. We hit this in our workshop before. Do you have SSH? Hopefully, maybe.
Is the version of Git 2 all days using maybe?
No.
What if you change the URL just to be HTTP?
I don't think that'll work.
Will it force? Because just doing a git pull, you don't need to authenticate.
None of these need an authentication. It's just the SSL cert.
So redoing that.
Nice.
The dice, okay.
Okay, so you need to do a git-c and then HTTP.
Hold on. What are you doing here?
So HTTP lowercase dot SSL and then capital V verify. There we go. Equals false.
What?
It's false. And then clone.
Oh. Oh, you like this?
Yeah, and then the repo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you're.
So this is going to wrap. So to get around the SSL, so this is just the the certificate for some reason is having problems on those Linux systems. At least I'm assuming, is that one of the Linux systems?
Nope. Windows 10.
Ah, okay. Well, for some reason, Windows 10 doesn't like the certificate. Whatever it is, I mean, because we don't need to authenticate or anything. There's no username or password involved here. It's just making sure no one can jump in the middle here and get you code that isn't what you're expecting. Kind of a security thing. We'll ignore that for now because we don't care in this case. So we're just adding a setting here that turns off checking the SSL certificate. But you only need that if you had problems with the first clone.
I got down through resolving deltas 100%, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
What are deltas? Tell me what you're feeling.
They are a way it stores things instead of storing every copy of a file, storing changes.
Successive changes.
Yeah. And it'll do compression of those things. And the low-level nuts and bolts, there's a lot going on in terms of doing that efficiently. All right. Anybody else having trouble with the clone, or are we all good? All right. Poor Sean. Okay, so we're going to start talking about Conda. So Conda is a package manager for Python. It can also handle software in other languages. It's just predominantly used for Python. Who does not have Mini Conda or Anaconda installed? So if you don't, just Google for Mini Conda, and the first hit will be the correct one. And download download the Python 3 version for whichever platform makes sense for you. So if you have Conda installed, you should be able to do conda -- version and get some kind of number out. Again, the exact number does not matter here as long as you can execute that command and get something that's not an error message.
Four point 0.5.
What was that?
And when I did that Conda version, then I got Conda 4.0.5.
Fine.
I downloaded this yesterday and I got 4.0.5.
I think I've run update Conda a few times. So you can actually have Conda update itself. I think we'll get there.
Which repository is Conda on?
So Conda is not in a Git. We're not going to get Conda from a Git repository.
No, just if I want to install it from like UW-AOS, where do I get that?
So yeah, that Conda kind of lives outside of all the Linux repositories. So if you want to grab it, conda.pydata.org/miniconda.html. Probably not legible from back there, but if you Google for Mini Conda, it kind of works outside of package managers for Linux to be a cross-platform solution for installing all these libraries and handling the fact that you need to compile these for all these different systems and whatnot, and provide just a one-stop shop to install a wide array of Python libraries. It's especially useful for doing scientific Python where you need, compiled Fortran extensions or C code or a few others. We can come back to the clone of the repository during break. It's not critical at this juncture. We'll do one thing that uses it, and beyond that, we don't have to have. We just need to have Conda working. So if everyone has Conda installed, one of the useful features of Conda is this notion of environments. So you can have different sets of packages installed side by side in an environment, so that you can, for instance, have one environment with the versions that are working to do your research paper, and another environment where you're playing with the latest and greatest versions of things, and make sure you don't break your workflow. So you can keep things working. You can keep your precious dissertation environment always working, but go do a workshop and use an entirely different environment that you can blow away when you're done. And so that's kind of the benefit of environments. And they're, Conda makes it relatively straightforward to get these things set up. So to set up an environment, we just say Conda create. We say -n for name. And I'm going to call this one, I'm going to call it Devel, just because.
So is there some directory we should be logged into this, or should we just make another work directory, or we should be in the Unidata?
For the Conda stuff, it doesn't matter what directory we're in right now. The environments, it handles where it keeps them. So environments aren't tied to a directory. It's more tied to, you activate them and deactivate them, kind of modifying your shell's environment.
So what have I what have I created now? Devel, is that a file? Is it a? What
It's the name of an environment that corresponds to a place where you're going to be installing Python packages.
So what does it occupy memory?
There is a directory on disk where it tracks the metadata for all the packages you've installed. It does things, if you really want the details, it gets into things like symbolic links or hard links to save space when you're sharing the same package versions across environments. But essentially, an environment corresponds to a directory on disk that it manages for you.
Oh, it's a quasi directory then.
Yeah. So you can create a new environment. Oh, too few. That's right. So kind of create -n, give it a name, and then a starting point. We always have to at least tell it some kind of base thing that we want installed. Either, that can be as simple as saying, I want Python, and I'll say Python equals 3. Because technically speaking, Conda is not just Python. It works for R. It works for anything for which you have a package. You can get packages for Conda. So we'll say here, I want to create a new environment called Devel, and start it off with Python 3.
All right, now I did hit it after I hit Devel, but I didn't put Python 3. So how do I correct my mistake?
Did it actually work? Because I got an error when I didn't give it anything.
I hit the controls.
so it'll give you an error message here.
Oh, I see. Okay, very good.
Okay. So if we run that, now we see it's going out to the cloud and it's looking for to see what packages it should do. And okay, so we get this list. Yours will probably give you a different set of things that'll be downloaded, but here are the packages going to install. Hold on. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right, that's the procedure.
Don't worry about following those commands. I'm getting out of my stuff. So if we go back, Conda create -n devel Python equals 3.
Then hit yes on the procedure. Yes, or no?
Yes, go ahead and hit yes.
That's the default yes.
Yep.
All right, now I'm fetching a bunch of stuff.
So it'll go download what it needs. Sure.
Okay.
Conda create. You give it the name of it, whatever you want to call your environment. I'm calling it Devel for development, but again, I'm terrible at naming things. And then start it off, we'll say Python equals 3. You can give it a whole bunch more packages if you know what you want your environment to contain, but we'll start here for now.
Okay. The significance of 3 on Python is what?
The major version.
Not Python 2?
Correct. So we'll focus on this workshop. We'll be using Python 3 because that's a place to, if you're learning Python new, Python 3 is definitely a place to start. And within some amount of years now, they'll probably no longer be supporting Python 2.
Because our group downstairs is still on using too.
And we'll keep supporting it as long as we need to, but the rest of the world and the rest of the Python world has been increasingly moving to Python 3. And for a lot of things, that's not actually all that painful a transition, except when it is. For most people, it's the difference between parentheses around your print statements is a solid 80% of it.
So is that right?
They change print from a keyword to a function, essentially. So, who does not have, did this not work for anyone? This Conda create? All right. So, we see after we got that command, it gave us some instructions. So to activate this environment, use this. To deactivate, use this. And so what we've done is we've created an environment and it set the things up and it downloaded the packages. But this environment isn't actually active. If we ran Python right now, it would not be using the Conda one, or at least not out of this environment. So to activate it, for Windows, it's just activate devel. On Linux and OS 10, it's source activate devel. Assuming you're using bash. If you're using TC shell, start by running bash because they just don't support TC shell. So we're just going to copy the command they gave us up here. Source activate devel. We see some things about it's mucking around with the path, basically to point us at the right version of Python. So now if I run Python -- version, all right, I got a Python version from Continuum Analytics. They are the makers of Conda. So I ran Python space -- version here to just see what Python I'm running. Now, in theory, all of you should have gotten the same version of Python here. Did anyone not get a line that says Python 3.5 Continuum?
351 Continuum in Analytics. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Did you do? Did that work for you now? Okay, awesome. Okay, so we have this. We have Python installed. That is nice, but what we really need is to start installing, be able to install some more useful tools. Among those would be NumPy, which is an array library for Python. If you know MATLAB, it kind of provides you a syntax like MATLAB. That's kind of the core of doing any kind of scientific work in Python. So if we want that, we can just say conda install NumPy. We get a list and it talks about this is what I need to download and this will be installed. We say yes.
Well, it looks like it's floating.
It's downloading the math kernel libraries from Intel, which is a fairly chunky package here. NUMPY.
30 seconds ETA.
Yeah, if scrolled off the bottom or scrolled off the top too quickly, apologize. And the command I ran here was conda install NumPy.
Now, Conda is again a distribution of which mini Conda is a subset.
Sure, yeah. All right. Who is still waiting for MKL to download? Okay.
Is Conda a good environment for distributing to other people? Like a lot of the work with the group I work with, we take scientific software, kind of wrap it up in a scripting language. Up until now, I've been using Perl, because I found it easy to distribute that way. But sometimes, I mean, are you allowed to distribute, like create an environment and distribute the whole thing so that the user can just use it without a bunch of instructions like, get Conda, download these packages, and then you set up your environment.
So they have a tool out there while we wait for these to finish.
The next question, of course, is it free? I mean, obviously there must be a commercial side.
Oh, they absolutely have a commercial side. Trying to remember what that thing was called. I will get back to you on that one.
Yeah, sure.
But
Yeah.
there's a project they have on GitHub specifically, basically to a generic Anaconda creator. So Anaconda is their big Python distribution that comes with all sorts of these packages. It's like a 2 gig download.
Yeah.
There is a tool out there to make your own distribution like that would give you, it wouldn't give you like a big exe file, but it would give you the ability to ship all the libraries in one download.
Right, so you
Living
can
together.
it all up.
Exactly.
Your code, the
Yep.
environment, everything.
Exactly.
So,
And it gives you kind of like a configuration file where you can specify what all packages belong in here, and it'll grab your packages as well as the dependencies and bundle them up. So I will dig that up during the break. All right. Everyone downloaded? We all good? If you want to check if we're good, Python -c import numpy print numpy.version. So that's from the command line, just telling the Python interpreter to execute a line of code here where I import the numpy library and print its version out. If that's too low, let me move that up a bit. So for the Python beginners here, importing a library, importing is essentially bringing in the library. It's kind of a combination of, including a file in C and linking it to your program. So if I run that command, it doesn't error on me and I get the version number.
We got a syntax error somewhere.
Missing semicolon.
Yeah.
So if we're able to run this line, then that means we've installed NumPy properly. Everything's good.
The version is what?
Underscore, 2 underscores.
Oh, underscores.
Yep. The word version and 2 underscores. Just a quick way to make sure things are installed and working and not broken. Which before Conda happened more than you would think. Everyone with me so far? Anybody not with me?
Yes. Yep, double. It's a Python is the double underscore is a frequently occurring thing. So. Okay. Anybody else not up to this point?
So he has Anaconda installed, this is all the channel, so it's a local channel. And he's not able to make a Python 3 environment file. He's looking at a local channel for.
Okay, for purposes of this morning, that'll work. We'll have to see what we can. That won't affect us going through the Conda tutorial or probably the Jupyter
No,
notebook.
right, but he can't make a Python 3 environment.
Fake it for now, make a Python 2 environment.
Okay.
Because we're not actually using Python 3 yet. Okay, so we got NumPy. If we want to install some more packages, we can say conda install. Matplotlib is a good one. So that's MATLAB-like plotting. It's the predominant Python plotting library. And we can also add SciPy here, which is a collection of scientific functions, various integrators, linear algebra routines, ODE solvers, interpolation, just a wide array of general scientific tools. A lot of wrappers around various Fortran libraries like LinPack or LayPack, things like that. So it's good to install those. And say yes.
Is there a way to get a list of the available libraries that they support you to download from them?
I don't know about listing them all. You can do a search.
Okay.
And I think we have that coming up eventually.
Okay. All right.
So I just wanted to seed some of these downloads.
So these are all being installed locally?
They're being installed within this environment. So it doesn't affect any of your system utilities, doesn't affect any environments outside of if you have other environments created.
If I created another environment and try and get something, it would look for them in the environments already got like soft links to them or something?
Yeah, basically, or it has a package download cache kind of thing.
Okay.
So it knows.
It's quite complicated because sometimes the versions change. Like I'm in, I've got one environment and been using it for years, and I change them in another one. Something's been updated.
And it will not change the version in that case until you update within the environment.
Right. So
yeah.
So when you download these libraries, does anything in this environment check for auto execute? Are there any security concerns there?
That's a good question. The packages themselves, so I guess the security concerns are potentially there are some hooks that it might be running some setup configuration things. So you're either running as a user with reduced permissions, or you've got a trust Continuum or whoever you're getting your packages from that those are not evil. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Right.
But there are potentially code execution in some of these packages. It's not frequent, but it's not. It is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Conda just related to Pi. Python, I should say.
No, it's expanded to R. And it's actually, in terms of Conda itself, is really just a generic cross-platform package manager.
Okay.
Anaconda starts bringing in the Python-specific stuff, where just the collection of packages. All right. So everyone got SciPy and Matplotlib installed as well. So that we've tested the install. I wanted those there because now I want to Conda remove. maybe I didn't actually want matplotlib, or maybe I installed some other thing. So if you want, the reverse of install is remove. So now we get another message here. Okay, we're going to remove matplotlib. And it actually will go through, and if you're removing things that are needed, it'll adjust. If it can install something else to make sure the tendencies are fulfilled to not break the rest of the environment, it'll do it, or it'll remove everything that depends on matplotlib. It'll go through the requirements to try and keep your environment working.
And what was the command again originally removed?
Conda remove right up here. So after we installed it, we can say remove to get rid of things. And that should be quick since we're not downloading this time. Let's see other useful Conda commands here. So you were asking about a list of packages. There's a Conda search. So if I want to search for, what's a good one to search for? Here you go. No, because that's an R.
Yeah.
And I think by default right now we're set to be talking to the default Python channel, so it doesn't have it. So if I do Conda search, Xarray is a useful tool out there. So we see here's a list of versions, and of course it's filtering by my platform as well on OS X.
Scikit-learn?
Sure. I guess you need a scikit. So there's a whole lot more variance here because it has to link against NumPy, and does it have the MKL linkage or not? And they have a lot of versions going back to .11. So
if you just try to install it, install the latest version.
Yep.
But you can specify a version if you want.
Yes. So if I wanted to say, I'm not going to actually let this download, and you don't need to replicate this. So we say equals 0.15, say. Ooh. Okay, well, that one it didn't like because of various other things that are in my environment. It's outdated and links against an old NumPy, and it just didn't like that. But that's how you would specify, I want this particular version. Sometimes, especially when you have these ones that are compiled, things don't mesh together as well. But one of the things Conda has brought the Python community is at least now you know they don't work together. Whereas before you could just install them, it would install without error, you'd go to run them, and then your code would crash. And that would be far worse. So let's see, what else do we need to do here? So at Unidata, one of the packages we work on is matpy. And so if I do a Conda search for matpy, we see there's nothing there. Continuum does not package matpy. There's no package available from them. So what we need to do is we need to be able to install or to set it to add an additional package repository to look at to find more of the packages. And so a Conda config add. We're going to add a configuration here. So it's Conda config -- add. We're going to add to the channels variable. We're going to say, I want Conda Forge. So Conda Forge is a community channel. Essentially a group of interested community members have set up this infrastructure on GitHub to automatically generate packages based on recipes that are stored in GitHub. And so you can, contribute version bumps and whatnot to try and keep the latest versions up to date there. And so we can get our packages from there as easily as just saying, I want to add this channel called Conda Forge. So now if I do Conda search matpy, Oh, it scrolled off. Just want to leave those commands up there. So now we can find it. And there's, with Conda Forge, there's a whole bunch more packages out there. And Conda Forge has been a nice addition for Conda because you used to be adding a variety of other people's channels for different packages and whatnot. And sometimes versions that are available in those will be in conflict. And so having this one predominant community channel has been a nice way to keep things straight. Yes.
So I was typed on board and I can't obviously find it. How do I remove it?
I know how to do it from the command line editing the file, but let's see. Conda config -H. In here. Oh, let's see. Oh. Okay. So yeah, it's if you want to do it, it's conda config -- remove channels. Make sure you replicate whatever was mistyped, and then you have to give it -- force to remove it. Or if you are comfortable with the command line, in your home directory, there's a .conda.rc file. If you look in there, there's all of your configuration information. Often I find it easier just to edit that file, but doing it from the commands that Conda provides is perfectly good too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ah.
Conda is not a file, not a directory.
Conda.rc is a file.
It's a file, okay.
It's dot.
.conda.rc.
Right. Right. Yes, okay.
Now, why is it giving me that? So I'm having trouble actually after that remove, and I'm not sure why. So I'm going to go edit the file and put that back. If I search for metpy again, it should all work. Yeah, okay. So everyone have Conda Forge set up as a channel now? No?
Mine just says, could not find anaconda.org.
Uh,
Not sure what I did.
that sounds like your network is having problems.
Conda search MPTGY, could not find.
Couldn't find the package or could not find?
Couldn't find anaconda.org user contra dashboard.
Oh, they said couldn't find Conda.
Huh?
Conda dashboard.
Contact.
CONDA. You spelled the channel wrong.
Okay, so let's just. Yeah, probably do it. Well, see what happens. I better take it back. See what happens if you do Conda search. Okay, so use Vim or actually you should have Vim. So Vim or VI space dot Conda RC. Yes, we have that home.
Okay. So just add a tilde slash to the VI command. Okay, so delete the semicolon. Yep. Okay. All right.
So. This is just maybe channel, I guess.
Yeah, that's the channel that's on. This is the version of Python that's built for. This is the version of the MetPy. And this is, I think, the default that you get if you just set it.
Oh, it's the
It's compatible.
Yeah.
It's a channel. There's different versions.
Yeah, I think it's all right. Anybody else having problems, or are we all caught up at the moment? All right. So just a couple more things we need here just to go over. So we've made an environment. If we want to get out of the environment, we can do source deactivate.
I'm trying to install MetPy. There was some stuff that was downgraded. Is that an issue?
Maybe. So I'm curious what it has downgrade.
You didn't actually install.
No, I didn't install it. I was more just using it as a test. I'm curious why it's doing that, but I don't think that's a problem. It worked. I'm not sure why SQLite's even involved there. I'm not sure who's pulling it in, but it's not critical. Like I say, MetPy doesn't need SQLite. Okay, so that's how we turn off the environment.
I noticed you didn't put source deactivate to the.
No, you just say source deactivate and it'll deactivate the current environment.
Okay, so you can't have, there's no way to have multiple.
You can source activate a different environment. You can't have multiple environments activated at one time. Yeah. That would, yeah, you can absolutely go to different shells and have, and I will have about 10 tabs open on my terminal, different environments in each one often. So let's see. If you want to see what environments you have, there's Conda env list. I'm going to have a lot more. You guys should probably have, I think, 2.
developing root.
Yep. Root's the base Conda install. So Conda's written in Python, so it has its own environment and set of tools there. And you can install your own there. You don't have to use environments. You can just install things there.
It's all the user side of the stall, so that kind of makes it.
Exactly. If you really want to hit the big red button, you can nuke your mini Conda directory or Anaconda directory. So if I look, I have a mini Conda 3 directory is where it's installed in my home directory. That's where mini Conda lives. Everything lives under there. If you want to, if you've really gotten yourself stuck, you can nuke that and start from scratch. But that's kind of the big sledgehammer approach. But yes, it's all user installed, so you're not going to affect your system.
And from the point of view of other users, they don't need root permissions in order to install that.
Exactly. It's a big win in that department.
Somehow I have a Unidata workshop for development, how they manage to do that.
That's impressive. We're going to get one of those in a second, but I don't know how you manage that without knowing it. That's. Oh, you're on the Linux, I think.
I may have pulled something down ahead of time. I don't remember.
It's all right. Well,
I may have set up a environment ahead of time.
We'll see. I'm sure then one of these commands is going to error, and that's okay. All right, so we listed the environments, and then, of course, if you want to get rid of an environment, Conda, env, remove, -n for the name, devel. And at this point, all that's doing is actually it's just going to delete the directory and the configuration and the sim links. It's not actually deleting the downloaded files.
You show that again.
Sure, yeah, it scrolled off on me. Conda env remove -n devel.
And yes on the.
Yeah, you say yes, and it unlinks the packages, and then Conda env list, and you won't see your devel anymore. I still have a bazillion environments, but devel is not among them. So that was Conda env list. So earlier we did that check out the clone of the Unidata Workshop materials. So now I want to circle back around to that and actually make use of that. So if you cd into the Unidata Python Workshop directory, I want to draw your attention to this file, environment.yml. So that's a configuration file that easily allows us to create an environment from just have everything specified in here. So we give the environment a name in here. We can specify channels we want, dependencies. But most importantly, from your guys' perspective, we can create an environment from that by going conda env create. I already have one, so I'm going to get this error message. If you're on any of Pete's Linux machines, you will also get this error message. But those of you on your own systems should not have any problems if you run that command.
And I can't read the command.
Conda env create.
So it's looking for the environment that one in the current directory.
Correct. And you can override that with flags on the command line, but by default, it looks for environment.yml. So, and go ahead and say yes if it asks you, because that's the environment then we'll be using going forward in here. For those of you on the Linux machines, like myself, who already have the Unidata Workshop environment, you can do source activate Unidata Workshop. And we can do conda update -- all.
I think I'm running, but I'm very slow and wait with it.
Okay. Well, you're on your machine, so you shouldn't need the update. If you got the error when trying to create the environment, then you already have the Unidata Workshop, and we just need to update things.
No, I'm getting the whole download. Almost there.
Right. No, you should be downloading.
So will you?
Or Jesus. All right, there we are. So if you got the error message when trying to do the conda env create, that means you already had it. So we needed to go ahead and activate the workshop environment and
I
update.
didn't get the error message.
So you don't need to do the update.
But except I'm downloading.
Right. Well, everyone's going to be downloading. That's the point right now. It's just if you got the error and already have the workshop environment, then we need to activate it and do conda update -- all to get everyone up to the same point.
Things have changed since I installed.
Yeah. Not much, but at least MetPy has a
Just
bump.
installed Matplotlib, which I blew away.
Well, you only blew away the install. The file shouldn't have needed to be re-downloaded. I don't think. All right. Still got people downloading out there? Okay. That's fine. Just getting a handle on it.
We need to source.
Source activate.
Workshop.
Yep. So, and I'll just do it again here just to put it up there. There we go.
And I should be in Unidata Python Workshop.
Yes. From this point, I think we're going to take a break, so we can start the break now if you guys are already downloading, or if you want to take a break while it downloads. That's the last part of Conda. I'll take any questions you guys have about Conda right now, but this will set us up for Sean's next part.
Yeah, I'd say a break with questions. If you guys have them, we can take those. Stretch your feet, let your machines download and stuff.
Yes, coffee.
Coffee, perhaps.
I thought there was a Docker file in there. Is it use Docker or?
You could set this up in its own documentation.
But we're not making any use of it here.
When should we reconvene?
Let's reconvene in 10 or 15. What do you think? 10.
I wouldn't even have to leave some of the lunch or something. So I don't
Gotcha.